Okay, in the previous video, we went over how to automate the run of a Jupyter notebook, if I can find that. Essentially, we're going to do a very similar process. So in that one, we took a batch file, which activated a virtual environment, and it ran a Python script. That script is what ran the notebook. The notebook itself processed some data, some customer data, and produced an output on churn prediction. That Python script also output a copy of the executed notebook. So this is going to be very similar. It's going to do the same things as far as activate a virtual environment and run a Python script. But that Python script is actually going to pull down the data, and it's going to pull down the notebook, the production notebook. That notebook is then going to get run over the data, which does some churn prediction for customers. Then it's going to output a 3-column CSV with customer ID, churn prediction, and probability. And the output CSV is then going to be sent to a data lake, along with the execute notebook and any of the cells that were with it and their cell values, like accuracy and things like that. So it's very similar to the last video. So I'm going to bring up the files. So in this one, we just have 2 files. We've got our script, our batch script or file, which CDs into the folder. It activates the virtual environment, and it calls this exe_notebook.py, and then deactivates the virtual environment. So that part's exactly the same as the previous video. What's different with this one, so the bottom part of this is pretty much the same, where we're getting our input notebook, input CSV name and all that stuff. But what's different is we have these 2 functions. And we have one function that's going to upload to the data lake, and then we have a function that's going to download from the data lake. So, and I do want to mention papermill is doing the running of the notebook. So the first thing we do is we get the name of the notebook that we want to process or pull down and run, and we want the name of the output notebook after it's done. We're going to put a date and timestamp next to the name. We also need to get the CSV that we want to use as an input, and then what we're going to name the output CSV with the predictions. And that's going to share a date and timestamp with the notebook, the output notebook. So we essentially download the notebook, we download the CSV, and after we do that, we do a pm.execute notebook, the papermill execute notebook, and it takes the input notebook path and the output that we just pulled down and ran, and we're going to pass parameters to the notebook. So we're going to pass the parameters of the CSV we want to run, the name of the CSV, and then the name of the CSV we want to use for the output. So finally, we're going to check if that notebook and CSV were actually generated, and if they were, we're going to upload both of them to the data lake, and then we're going to remove all the files that were just created in the process. And we can actually see that. This runs takes enough time to run that we can see the generation of the files. So if I go ahead and actually, let's go to the data lake. I've already run it once, so we can see things like here's the executed notebook, and here's the predictions, and we've got this customer CSV in the data folder, and our production notebook is here that's going to pull down. So if we actually run this, so we're going to see while it's running, because it's going to take a little while, the generation of the files. So it just pulled down the files from the data lake. It pulled down the notebook we want to run, the CSV with the data, and it's already created the output notebook. And when this finishes running, it's going to have the customer prediction CSV. We're going to see that pop up. And then we're going to see all of them disappear because it's going to, after it uploads everything, it's going to remove it from the folder. So we see that customer prediction CSV, and then all of that disappeared. And now if we go to execute notebooks, we'll see there's another one that just got run. And likewise with predictions, we now have another predictions file. So if I go back to the diagram, so what we did here is we had a batch file. Now we would use some kind of orchestration tool to kick this off. But once it got kicked off, it would activate a virtual environment and run the Python script. We looked at that script. It's going to pull down the data in the notebook. It's going to run the notebook. From there, the notebook produces a CSV of the predictions. And the Python script has one final function, and that is to upload the executed notebook, copy of it, and the processed data. and finally clean everything up when it's done. So we're left with nothing but the batch file and the py file in the folder. And that's one way to productionize. I would add one more thing to this. Um, well, on top of error handling for the Python file, I just threw this together. Um, Logging. You know, in the real world, I also have a logging function that creates a log file, and that's going to get it's going to a lot of the important data around like what was done, the size of the files, the accuracy of the model is going to be pushed up to the lake as well. So that way I can run analytics over it and get alerts when things change. But you can see from this pretty much how it works. It's pretty straightforward. It's basically a scenario where a data scientist hands you a Jupyter notebook and you have to productionize it. And you don't necessarily have every tool available. VMs are pretty common, so that's a tool that a lot of people have access to in data lakes as well. So that's why I put together this scenario where a VM is used for the compute and the orchestration, and the storage is being done with data lake. That's pretty much all there is to it. There were a few things I had to do. Let's see, where is it? For my virtual environment, um, I needed to install a few things to get this all to work. Um, And I'll put all this stuff below the video. I'll include it. So if a person wants to, they can just easily copy and paste it. And I think that was it. And I'll also include this, the bat file, although it's pretty straightforward as far as how you call the Python script. But yeah, if there's any questions, feel free to ask. Thank you.